Okay, so welcome to our session. This session's about supporting your child's early speech, language and communication development. You'll notice through this training we'll be specifically talking about early language development. However, a lot of the strategies that we'll be sharing are actually appropriate for a lot older children as well, okay, because they're just good strategies to implement at home, out and about, and for settings they'll be using the same strategies as well in the preschools and nurseries and schools. Just to introduce myself, so I'm the strategy officer for early language and communication, and my name is Jo Grace. And we also have Lisa Gridley here, who is my manager, and she is the SEND strategy lead. Lisa is going to be in the background monitoring the chat. So throughout this training, you might think, okay, actually, I've got a couple of questions that you might want to ask, and feel free to put them in the chat. So we will hopefully have some time at the end for you to ask any questions yourself. But throughout it, you might find that it just brings up some points that you might want to mention. So feel free to put them in the chat, and then Lisa will answer any questions as we go through. As you know, the session is being recorded, so please do not use names or anything specific, because this is going to be going live on the local offer website. Okay, how tonight's training is going to work is we're going to initially talk about how speech and language develops, and talk about the role that you can play in supporting your child's speech and language and communication skills at home and when you're out and about. So we've chosen some key strategies that you can implement, and we'll be running through each of those strategies as we go through the hour. With some of the strategies, we also share some videos just to break the session up, and this brings almost the strategies to alive. You get to see them in action, so it sometimes makes it a little bit easier to digest. And then finally, we'll be sharing some key websites that you can go to after this session for you to look up in your own time. All the videos that we share during the session will be shared in the chat. So if you want to watch them later on, you can, or if you want to share them with your friends, you're more than welcome to. Or if you have problems with the sound, you might want to just pause, wait for the video to stop, knowing that you can watch the video in your own time. Okay, they're no more than 2 minutes. So if you do have problems watching it, just wait and we'll be coming back all together anyway. Okay, so here we go. So I'm sharing now something called a communication pyramid, and this is a real summary of how speech and language develops in children. You might realise if you've got very young children or older children, actually speech and language is actually really, really complex, and there's a lot to it. And it's something that has to be practiced all the time in order to develop it. So it's a bit like riding a bike. You have to practice it lots and lots of times. A bit like when a child is learning to crawl and learning to walk, you need to offer the child lots of opportunities and motivation to get them to start walking, and the encouragement, and they need to practice it lots in order for them to become strong. And it's exactly the same with speech and language and communication skills. So as you can see, the pyramid goes into a peak at the top, with the bottom bit starting as attention and listening. And this is the foundation for all the skills when it comes to speech, language and communication. And we want the attention and listening in young children to be really strong. So we need to be practicing those skills with young children, and we need to be offering them lots of rich opportunities in order for them to practice it. As well as that, they need to have opportunities to see these being modelled. So they need to be seeing you being a good listener. So things like developing attention and listening is really taking the opportunity and finding out what your child is really interested in, and then spending some quality time playing with those things. So if your child is really interested in dinosaurs, or really interested in jigsaw puzzles, try to turn off all distractions around you and your child, the TV, iPad, distractions going on around the room, mobile phones, and sit down and play with your child in something that they're really interested in. Because the more you do that, the more they're going to enjoy your company and seeing how involved you can be. Not only that, while you're playing with them, without realising, you're actually going to be modelling some of the strategies that I'm going to be sharing tonight, which will develop their communication skills. Listening is something that needs to be modelled. So to be a good listener, we need to show the person that we're listening, okay, by looking at them. We're not a very good listener if we're moving around and looking all around us, or looking at our phone or watching the television. We're looking at the person who's talking and we look like we're interested. And by doing that with your child, they will start mirroring those skills and start doing that themselves when they realise someone is talking to them. Then we'll move on to social interaction and play. You may be aware, depending on the age of your child might be struggling with things like social interaction because of all the things that has been restricted for them during COVID. So they weren't able to go to the zoo during COVID. They weren't able to go on play dates with their friends. They weren't able to go to soft play or round nanny and granddad's house. And when they go and have these experiences, they're having new things modelled to them. So they're having an adult point to them and saying, wow, look at the giraffe. And can you see the elephant? Or walking into nanny's house and nanny giving them a cuddle and doing some cooking with them. All of those rich experiences, young children were, all those experiences were taken away from them because of COVID. And all those opportunities would be opportunities for a child to practice their language and communication. And things like turn taking either in a conversation or turn taking with playing with each other, or as simple as having eye contact and having a conversation, okay, and listening to the person. So if your child didn't have those opportunities, maybe because they were younger during COVID, it is even more important to do that now. Even if they're 4, 5 and 6 and there were skills that they would normally develop around 2, it's still really important to do that now. And the easiest way of doing that, just like through attention and listening, is through play. Play is a really rich opportunity for children to develop their language and communication. We then move on to understanding, which is a bit trickier to understand because it happens in the brain, okay? And we can't always see those cogs working in young children's minds. So when we're talking about what we're doing or what we're seeing or what we're playing with the child, all of those opportunities are building up a language-rich environment for that child. So let me see, I've got a teddy here and I'm going to give the teddy a cuddle. And while I'm giving Teddy a cuddle, I'm going to say, oh, look at Teddy. Teddy, I'm giving Teddy a cuddle. And what you might notice is I'm saying Teddy a lot. I'm cuddling Teddy. Can you see Teddy? And Teddy's sleeping. And while I'm using the word Teddy and I'm pointing at the word Teddy and I'm cuddling the teddy, the child will start to build up a connection between this and the word teddy. And it will go in their brain and it will be embedded. And another time at bedtime, where we say, come on then, let's put Teddy next to us. It's that same word again. Oh, that's the same word that I heard downstairs when we were playing with Teddy. So it's the more we use these words, the more the child is going to start understanding them and then hopefully start using them. And that's when we go into expressive language, which is when a child or an adult are saying those words. And then finally, as a child develops their speech muscles, they start pronouncing their sounds correctly, okay? And there is a whole process of when children pronounce their sounds. Some develop much quicker than others. like the d sound, develops very quickly. But again, it's the more the child practices and the more the child will hear these words around them, that they're more likely to be able to pronounce them a bit clearer. So it doesn't work in a linear line, okay? We need to have strong skills lower down the pyramid to support those skills higher up. But the skills all continue to develop alongside each other as the child progresses. A child will continue to develop their skills when they are surrounded by good role models, okay? And that's you. You're seeing them at home every day, and you have lots of rich learning environments at home, lots of rich learning opportunities, like having breakfast together, changing nappies, having a bath, playing, going out and about in the buggy, going shopping. All these opportunities are a chance for you to practice these skills. So everything that we discussed today is shared on something called our Talk, Listen and Cuddle website, which is a website at Essex County Council. And if you scan the QR code at the top right hand corner, it will take you straight to the Talk, Listen and Cuddle website. And this is a parents website, and it has lots of rich articles on there for you to look at to deepen your understanding about how to support your child's language development at home, right from birth all the way up to when they're much older, okay? You can also follow the Facebook page, so it's not a static website, it's continuously developing. So if you follow the Facebook page, you will see when new things are added on there. So tonight's training, we're actually going to run through our TLC top talking tips, which is the first time that we've talked about it. It's launching now. This is our launch. And these are our top tips in supporting young children's development in speech, language and communication. So I'm not going to run through each one now because we've got a slide on each one, okay? And that's when I'll talk about how you do it and why it's important. So the first one we're going to talk about is saying your child's name first. Now, this might seem really simple, but actually, if you've not done it before, you might need to practice it a few times. And then once you practice it, when you don't do it, you suddenly realise actually how useful this strategy is. So an example of this would be if we're getting ready to go to school in the morning and I say to my daughter, go and get your coat on, Poppy. The moment I say the word Poppy, her name, she'll probably turn round if she's not fully engrossed into something else. Okay, so if all being well, if she's not distracted by anything, we're just standing in the hallway and I say, go and get your coat on, Poppy, she'll probably turn round and react when I say the word Poppy. But that means that she's missed all that beginning content, the instruction that I gave her to start with. Okay, so the easiest way is to make sure the child has actually got all the information that you want, is to say the child's name first, wait for them to gain their attention, okay, with you, and so you have that shared attention together, and then share what you want to say. So, Poppy, go and get your coat on. And even better, you'll use a gesture with that, which we'll talk a bit later. Okay, so Poppy, get your coat on. By doing that, by saying your child's name first, it will help you get your child's attention before you talk to them. And it often then disperses any possible behaviour problems that you'll have, okay? Because automatically, if you say, go and get your coat on, Poppy, and she doesn't, it might look like she's being rude or that she's ignoring me. Well, actually, it's probably just because they miss that beginning content of what you've shared. Okay, so say the child's name first, wait for them to respond, and then give them the content of what you're going to say. If your child still doesn't respond when you say their name, just give them a gentle tap, hold their hands and gain their attention. They're more likely to listen and process the information that you're talking about if you know that you've got their full attention. And don't worry, for very young children to gain a child's attention can be a little bit tricky, especially if they're really engaged in what they're playing with. So if they're really enjoying their dinosaur game and you say their name, they're probably going to find it a little bit tricky to come away from what they're playing to listen to you. And that's why it's really important to just say their name again, gain their attention, and then give them the information. The next one is get down to your child's level. Now, there's several reasons why we say this. The first one is that once you're down at the child's level, you're having that shared experience. So you've said their name, okay, you might want to hold their hand, you might want to stand near them, but once you're looking at them and they're looking at you, you can completely fully engage the situation, okay? Then you can give your instruction. But on top of that, the child will gain so much more than just having your shared attention. They'll also gain your facial expressions, okay, and they'll be copying those in the different situations. They'll also be able to mirror your mouth muscles, which will help them with pronunciation. So if we're doing something really scary, I'm close. We're going to play a game now, okay? The child is feeling that excitement from your face. They're getting those emotions, okay? So they're sharing those emotions. They're learning about facial expressions. So getting down to your child's level helps them see your face. This helps with learning facial expressions, pronouncing sounds, and keeping the child engaged. Getting down to your child's level also helps you share the same experience. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when I talk about commenting on play. But it is really important to have that shared experience because it helps the child to become engaged for longer and feeling like you're with them in that moment. So the next one is about follow your child's lead. And when we're playing with young children, it's really tricky not to get overexcited about what we want to play. So it might be that you have the dinosaurs in front of you and your child is building a tower with those dinosaurs, but actually you want them to play with the game how you want to play it. And if you do it like that, believe me, they will be less engaged than if they're leading their own play. So whatever they're doing with their dinosaurs, if they're building their tower, or if they're stomping them, continue that play and follow through with what they're doing. They're more likely to stay engaged for longer, which will build their attention and listening skills up. Remember the strand that we talked about at the beginning with the pyramid. They're more likely to stay on task for longer and actually be more engaged. And in which case, once they're at that point, you're then able to develop their language and communication because you've got them, you've captured their attention. So following your child's lead can reduce frustration and your child will play for longer. It gives them the confidence to try new things because it's something that they want to do. It's something that they're finding exciting. Your child is more likely to learn if she or he is interested in what they're doing. And it shows that you are interested, which again will build up that attention and listening and that shared experience. So we've got a video that we're going to share with you now. And this website is from Tiny Happy Little People, which is a really good website to look at. And it's about joint attention. Is that okay, Louise? Lovely.
Sleepy, yeah. Let's tuck Teddy in.
Teddy?
Yeah.
And that's what we do, comb our hair with a comb.
Do you know, babies are able to lead you to what's caught their attention and want to chat about it. They're putting their tools for talking into practice.
Orange.
It's an orange. Let's put the orange in the trolley.
Some may be saying words, some may be pointing.
With the lamp?
They get in the hang of being little communicators thanks to you interacting with them.
You're saying Baba?
So follow their lead to what's caught their interest and talk about it with them.
You put some bubbles in. Mix it up. Yay!
Use clear language as they connect your words with their focus.
Henry's washing Teddy.
And start to introduce simple questions like what or where about their interest.
Where's Daddy's head? Where's Daddy's nose?
Remember, your baby's understanding more words, so wait for their lead, respond to their focus and keep doing it.
It's Slippy. Slip, slide, slip and sliding.
Okay, so the next strategy that we share is about making more comments, and this will help develop your child's vocabulary, so building up the amount of words that they hear and then be able to talk about them themselves and say those words themselves. So it's more questions and that you ask then less questions. Okay, sorry, you make more comments, sorry about that. You make more comments which will automatically reduce the amount of questions you're asking. And by doing that is you're building up the vocabulary that the child is hearing. Okay, so the child is going to hear more. And naturally, you'll just reduce the amount of questions. And the reason why you do that is because actually questions don't always develop vocabulary. They develop thinking.
Sorry, can you just reshare your screen? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's all right. I'm waffling. Is that it?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So we're making more comments and asking less questions. So unlike questions, commenting doesn't put your child under any pressure. So while you're playing with your dinosaurs, instead of saying, oh, what are you doing? Where are you going? What dinosaur have you got? Where are you walking? That's automatically going to stop that child's play. Because actually a child who's very young probably isn't thinking about where they're going, where they're walking, what dinosaur it's called. Instead, say, oh, you're using the big dinosaur, stomp, stomp, stomp. And we've got a video that's going to show that, okay? So you are sharing new words by making more comments, and it's going to keep your child more engaged. And it shows as well that you're interested in what they're doing. Thank you, Louise.
Commenting is used all the time in everyday conversations. It can be a great way to share ideas or opinions. When talking with children, it is very common to use more questions than comments. Questions are overwhelming for children and can lead to them feeling tested and anxious. Imagine every child has a bucket, and when asked a question, information is taken out of the bucket. However, when comments are used with a child, language is added to the bucket. Language develops in children when they are provided information to think and talk about. By increasing the number of comments used, a child hears many new words in different situations without the pressure to respond. A hand is a great reminder for the ideal number of comments to make. Every finger represents a comment, and the thumb represents a question or an invitation to contribute. Ideally, that is 4 comments to every question. When next interacting with a child, use a hand to count how many comments can be made in a minute. So what to comment on? There are lots of different things to comment on, for example, objects, actions, feelings, and describing words. When tempted to ask a question, try and answer the question out loud. If the question is, what can you see? A comment could be, it's a red truck. Another strategy is to pretend to be a sports commentator. For example, he's got the ball, he's running down the field, he scores a try, and the crowd goes wild. Instead of commenting on sports, try commenting on a storybook. The dog is sitting at the bus stop. Here comes the yellow bus. The dog is happy, he's on the bus. The end. Commenting is a crucial part of developing a child's communication skills and helping their language tree grow. So next, when talking with a child, focus on filling up their bucket rather than emptying it.
I'll remember to share my screen this time. Okay, so this leads really well on to comment on what your child is doing or what you're doing. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of commenting rather than asking lots of questions. And sometimes you might think, okay, what do I actually comment on? And there were some good examples during the video. But if we think about when we're out and about and we're in the woods and your child has got their welly boots on and they've got their coat on and their rain hat and their umbrella, and it's raining and they're stomping in muddy puddles, that is a great opportunity for you to model about what your child is doing, and you can comment on exactly what they're doing. So, wow, you're jumping in muddy puddles, you're getting very wet, or I can see a bird. The more you do that, okay, the more the child is building up a rich range of words that you're exposing them to out and about. So not only have you got your rich range of words that you're using in your home, like when you're baking a cake or when you're doing colouring in or when you're playing Play-Doh or when you're playing with a train set, all those rich words that you're modelling, it's going to then make a connection about when they have those same experiences when they're in their setting. Okay, or when they're around Nanny's house. If everyone comments and just asks a few questions to allow your child to develop their thinking skills, they're building those range of words up. And then eventually, the more they hear them, the more likely they'll use them. So try to be the voiceover in your child's world. So whatever they're doing or whatever you're doing, you can then comment. So I'm mixing the eggs with the flour, or I'm pouring the water in the jug. Say what your child is doing and what you're doing and what they're looking at. So again, when we think about the strategies that I've shared before, getting down to your child's level, gaining their attention, that's all about that shared sustained thinking, that shared experience you're having with the child. And once you have that shared experience, it's much easier to then follow through to see the things they're looking at, see the things they're engaged in, and they're the comments that you can make. So your child will hear the words you are saying and make a connection between what they are seeing and what they are doing. So if we think about when the child is jumping in the muddy puddles, when you say, oh, you're jumping, the child is making the connection between what they're physically doing and the word you've just said. Try to speak in short sentences. Speaking in short sentences makes it easier for your child to understand what you're saying. Okay, so generally the rule of thumb would be if your child is talking at 2-word sentences, you would talk at a range of 3 or 4 so that you can develop their range of words, but they're also at a point where they're fully understanding what you're saying. Okay, so if the child says, oh, wow, car, okay, you can say, yes, it's a red car. Try to speak in shorter sentences because it will make it easier for the child to fully understand what you are saying. As well as that, they can then hear the sounds in the words more clearly, because when you speak in shorter sentences, you're more likely to speak a little bit slower and making your sentences clear when you speak to them. As well as that, when you're speaking in short sentences, you're not bombarding them with lots and lots of new information and lots of new words. It's going to be really hard for the child to process what you're saying if you do that. I've just given an example of this actually about repeating back what your child says. And there's several reasons why this is a really good strategy to use. So the more a child hears a word, the more likely they are to start understanding it, and then they'll start to use it. The example that I gave about the teddy is a prime example. So I use the word teddy lots during that interaction with the child. Okay, and the more they hear that word, the more likely they'll say it. But then when the child does say it and the child says, Teddy, by you acknowledging them about what they've said, they're then hearing that word said back correctly. Okay, and it then just embeds it in their mind even further, and also makes them feel like, oh, you've actually heard me, you're listening to me. So it's making your child feel valued. So there's lots of reasons why we repeat back what the child's saying, and it's not about repeating back every single word or every single sentence. You say it when it feels appropriate and natural. So the example that I gave earlier on about when the child points at the car and says, oh, and then I said, oh yes, it's a red car. I've repeated back what the child's saying, but I've added another word on to build their vocabulary up. It might be that at some stage your child starts to say words that don't sound very clear, okay, just because they haven't developed their muscles in their mouth to say them very clearly, okay. It could also be to do with the fact of how they've heard those words being said. If the child does say a word unclearly, there is no reason for you to try and feel like that you need to correct them, because that will knock their confidence. So please don't say things like, if they say the word dar instead of car, please don't feel the need to say car, it's car, say car, because that can really knock their confidence. And in fact, it doesn't always help the child with actually pronouncing the sounds. But what does help is actually if you just repeat back what they've said and you're saying it correctly. Okay, so if they say the word dar, dar, pointing at the car, you can say, yes, it's a red car. So the last thing the child would hear is the sound of the word car said correctly. So the more a child hears a word, the more likely they are to use it and understand it. Repeating back allows the child to hear the words pronounced correctly, okay, because remember, you're the good role model. And the child will also feel like they're being listened to. We've got an example here of some parents repeating back what the child is saying just through a natural experience.
Daddy's beard.
Red cup.
Da 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 da.
Can you count the cranes? How many? Crane. Wow. There?
Oh, this is a very big snake. One fine day.
What's this? Socks. Are you making a noise? This is good.
Oh, are you giving Daddy kisses?
BBC, Tiny Happy People, because your words build our world.
Hopefully, as you are watching these videos, you're starting to make a connection between the other strategies that I've been sharing this evening. So this one, the next strategy within our TLC top 10 talking tips, is about pausing. So it's offering your child time to think and process information. So lots of things that I might be talking about tonight might be new to you, and actually you might find, well, I'm sharing lots and lots of information, it's quite hard to process, and so watching the video back later on might be helpful because it might help embed the things that I'm saying. For some of you, you might be really well experienced about this, so actually the speed that I'm going at might be absolutely fine and you're able to retain the information and process it yourself. For young children, they haven't got that ability yet because they haven't got all the words that we know. They haven't got all the experience we know, okay? So they take longer to process information. So we need to be able to offer them time to process what we're saying. So if we're out and about and we're in the woods and I point up at the sky and in the tree, I can see a bird. And I'm going to say the word bird. I'm going to point it and I'm going to say bird. There's a bird up there. And then I'm going to wait. So the child can process that word bird. And then remember to make the connection between the word I've just said and the object that's in the tree. So they start to begin to label those objects in their mind. Once you've waited that, those few moments for them to process it, you might say, oh, another bird. I can see another bird. And then once again, like I said at the beginning, the more the times the child will hear those same words, the more the child will start to understand that word and start to use it themselves. So giving your child time to talk and to express their interests and feelings will help them feel listened to. So when your child is talking to you, offer them time to slow their speech down. Don't make them feel like we're in a rush. Okay, and if they know that they've got time, the more likely they're going to express themselves rather than feeling stressed. For very young children, such as around 2.5, they've got so much going on in their brain, so many connections that they're making around the world around them and the words that they're hearing. Sometimes their brain works faster than the words that come out of their mouth, and that's when they can start stumbling on words. But by you just showing them that they've got all the time to express themselves and you're giving them time to think, will allow those words to come out more slowly and for them to really try to make them make sense so they're understood. Slowing yourself down and pausing after you've said something allows the child time to process what you have said. Commenting on what your child is doing and then offering time for the child to process information will give them an opportunity to use those words themselves. So we're going to watch another video here, which is about the power of pausing.
Pausing is a powerful strategy that creates positive communication opportunities. It allows children time and space to process information. When talking with a child, it's easy to rush into asking them questions or changing the topic. Adults aim to make communication interactions as enjoyable as possible, and pauses can feel awkward and like the conversation is ending. This puts pressure on adults to keep the conversation going. Children are different. They require extra time and space to build their understanding, then come up with a response. Firstly, stop talking, lean forward and look at the child expectantly. Count 8 pink elephants in your head before you comment again. Once a child initiates communication, respond immediately and then repeat the process. Here's an example. Jack is reading a book with his mum. Look, it's a dog on a bus. Wheels. It has got 2 black wheels. Jack was able to lead the conversation and indicate to his mum that he was interested in the wheels rather than the dog. The pause gave Jack the opportunity to use his words. His mum was able to expand on his comment and then provide him with even more language input. It is important when pausing that the child knows that it is now their turn to communicate. For children who are not talking yet, any look, sound, gesture or word that shows their interest or need counts as their turn. If after 8 pink elephants the child has not responded, model to them what they could have said and then pause again. This teaches them crucial communication turn-taking skills. Pausing is a powerful tool that will open up all sorts of communication opportunities with children. When next talking with a child, try frequently pausing to the count of 8 pink elephants.
We're all going to be counting pink elephants in our mind later on. It's going to feel really uncomfortable to start with, to have that silence in between making comments. Like I said at the beginning of the video, that actually for us as adults, silence can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable and we want to feel it. And with children, we don't need to feel that. Okay, so offering thinking time is really good once you've made a comment or once they've made a comment. Okay, so the idea of the 8 elephants is just a pattern for you to count in your mind. Okay, I've been using lots of gestures tonight, you might have noticed. Okay, and gestures are really important for all children, but in particular those children that have communication difficulties. And vocabulary delay, because actually what we're doing is we're making a connection between the word that we're saying and what we are actually talking about. Okay, I sometimes explain it that actually when you say a word, it disappears straight away. So when I say an unusual word that you've never ever heard before, once I've said that, it's gone. You've got no other way of capturing what I've just said. So using things like gestures, visuals, picture cards, real objects keeps that object in front of you, in front of the child for a longer period of time, so they can then process the word that you've just said. Okay, so either an object, so say for example I've got an orange here, or a satsuma for a child might be a completely new word. So once I say the word satsuma, would you like a satsuma? That word has disappeared. Whereas if I hold up a satsuma and I say, oh, would you like a satsuma? The word has gone, but the object still remains. So the child can make a connection between the word I've said and the object. Another way of doing that is actually just about using our own hands. So pointing at things and using our hands. So if I'm going to put a coat on, we say, can we put a coat on or put our hat on? If you've got the real object, that's even better. Okay, so pointing and using gestures helps your child to make a connection between the words that you are saying and the object. And when when a word is new to the child, by you pointing out what the object is, they're more likely to start understanding what that word is. And when you are giving the child an instruction, showing them what you're talking about will really help them process that information. Okay, we won't need to look at the link here at the bottom, but I've just put it at the bottom, so maybe if Louise shares that in the chat. So I like to talk about the importance of singing songs and sharing stories. Nursery rhymes and stories are a wonderful, rich way of you developing your child's vocabulary, and they're incredibly simple. Okay, so if you don't know certain nursery rhymes, you can go onto the TLC website and there's some nursery rhymes where you can click the button and it plays the song to you, okay, with the words there. Research shows if your child knows around 8 rhymes before they start school, actually they'll become better readers and writers, which is absolutely astonishing, I think, considering we can just sing all day to our children. They don't have to be classic nursery rhymes. Okay, you can just be singing to your children all the time. Everything you're doing, when you're making cakes, when you're playing in the bath, just sing songs. It really builds up the vocabulary, and it also builds up that attention and listening, which we were talking about at the beginning. Stories, again, are great ways of building up new words that the child may not have heard before, and in particular rhyming stories. So with that repetitive rhyme, like the repeating refrains, like We're Going on a Bear Hunt, for example, is a really good example of a book where it just keeps repeating, because the more times the child will hear those words, the more likely they'll start to understand them, and the more likely they'll start to use them. So playing with words and sounds helps your child remember new words and make connections. Hearing stories and songs helps a child learn new words. And books and songs that provide repetition help the child develop their words in their sentences. So to make a story even richer, or a song even richer, it would be about involving things like puppets or objects. Because like what we said before, once we start making a connection between the word and the object, the more likely it's going to make a connection within the brain. So try to make up little rhyme baskets at home, just with things that you've got around the house. So row, row, row your boat. You might have a little boat from your bath toys, okay? Or Polly put the kettle on. You might just have a teapot. Okay, so then the child can find these objects in the basket or in the bag, showing you what song they would like to hear. So there's more information about that on the Talk, Listen and Cuddle website. So we're just finishing off, so we've got time for questions, okay, after I share these websites. There's the link here for, or the QR code, sorry, for the Talk, Listen and Cuddle website, but we'll just have a look at it now while we've got a couple of minutes so I can talk through it. Hopefully this works. Yeah, it does. Okay, so this is the website that I was talking about at the beginning. Okay, so this is an Essex County Council website to support parents in developing their young child's speech and language. It looks different if you're using it on a mobile phone. So because I'm sharing it on a laptop, you have the ribbon at the top. On your mobile, you'll just get 3 lines in the top right hand corner for you to click on. The quickest way to probably navigate it is if you're clicking on click on games and resources. And then you can scroll down and you can see the rich range of articles that are on here. Most of which will be a connection between the things I've spoken about tonight. So we've got an article here called Language Focused Play, and this is about just spending 5 minutes a day with your child to play with them, to develop their vocabulary and develop their attention listening skills. So if I click on this one, they all have the same basis. They'll have a tab here on the right hand side if you're looking on a laptop. If not, it'll be at the bottom, and you can click here for more information. There's always a little bit of blurb about what language focused play is and some bullet points to help you actually put it into practice. And then there's a top tip at the bottom. So there's lots of articles here for you to look at, information about Makaton, how to develop spoken language, looking at visuals, like we were talking about gestures, attention listening games, how to make Play-Doh. Let's see what else. We've got the relationship between play and language that I was talking about. Play, following your child's play, tummy time. And there's one down the bottom as well about how to make a rhyme sack, I think I've put on there. So there's lots of information on here for you to look at in your own time. But again, like I said at the beginning, this is sort of a website that continuously develops. So we're always putting new things on here. Tips and links, there's some websites that you can go to, some of which I've put in the on the slide for you. So we've got a website that's changed their name actually. Hungry Little Minds is a different name now, so I need to change that. But that's a government website about supporting your child's language and communication. We've also got here the Essex Child and Family Wellbeing Service, so you'll probably know them as the Family Hubs. So if you've got any concerns about your child, you might want to go there. Most of them around Essex offer a drop-in service at certain times of the week where you can go along, and if you have a concern about your child's speech and language, okay, the first place I would recommend, if you are concerned about your child's speech and language, if they're in a setting, go and speak to their key person, okay? They see them potentially a good few times a week, so they'll see them engaging with their peers, and they understand about the different stages of development in young children, so they can give you advice. If they're not already in a setting, then please pop along to one of your family hubs and you can ask for advice. Okay, and then finally is the rhyme time section that I was talking about, where you can click on them and hear the songs. But there's further information including oh, I'm just thinking about how am I going to get back. If your child is ready for school, there's lots of advice about starting school, but follow the Facebook page because that's how you get regular updates. So we've got the website Tiny Happy People, which I've shared quite a few videos from their website. That's by the BBC. There's lots on there that you can access. And there's also Speech Language UK is a really good website for you to get information and advice for you as a parent. And then finally, if your child has got any additional needs, Essex Local Offer is a website that you can look at for more information, and that's where the recording for this video is going to be.